the contemporary church, 21st century so far, right? This is the last session. And it's going to be a short one because we've only been through a quarter of the 21st century. But I can't believe it's been a quarter of the quarter already. We're in the 20s, mid 20s. Okay. The 20s now is not 1920s. The 20s now is the 2020s. So, the global shift in Christianity was what I ended up with the last lecture. So I'm going to continue talking about the global shift in Christianity because this is a very interesting thing. If you look at, all right, the church history, right, there have always been like different centers of Christianity. So if you are started off in the first century, the center of Christianity was at first Jerusalem and then Antioch, right? So Jerusalem, Antioch become the two centers of Christianity. And then it extended to when it went to Rome. Then Rome become a big center. All right, so Rome, Alexandria. So we have the Pentateuch. Remember, Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Constantinople. Right. So these become the five major centers of Christianity. Primarily, it's really Rome and Constantinople. Right. So then after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the center of Christianity kind of like moved up during the medieval times, moved up to places like Ireland. Ireland become like the center of Christian work, all right? And in the East, went up to Russia, become the center of Christian work in Kiev. So the center of Christian work moves throughout the ages. Eventually, of course, then Protestantism. So the center of Christian work was in Germany, in Switzerland, Geneva. John Calvin ministers there, right? And then during the British Empire era, okay, then really Britain become kind of like the center of all this missionary work, and then the United States as well. Okay. Now in the 21st century, the center of gravity of Christianity now is firmly in the global south. It's just a matter of time before you have the first African Pope, the first Asian Pope, right? Probably maybe a Filipino Pope or something like that, right? Because the center of Christianity always moved, and it is now again moving. So the majority of Christians now live outside of the West. Africa, Asia, Latin America. So it's a southward movement and an eastward movement. Yeah. Major centers of growth. What happened to the Western Church? Well, the Western Church enters into a post-Christian era. By post-Christian, I mean there's a decline of nominal Christianity. That's how I define it. Okay, there's no ways to think about post-Christian. So the Christian era, basically, people who go to church lah. Then there are people who go to church maybe only for Easter and Christmas. All right. Now, those will be nominal Christians, right? Cultural Christians. But when that too decline, they stop being nominal Christian and just be atheist. So that become post-Christian. Those are committed to Christ, remain committed to Christ. Those are not committed, all right, now completely renounce any association with the Christian faith. You see? So it is not a non-Christian society, it's a post-Christian society. So therefore, there is a inbuilt memory of Christianity, but I am not a Christian anymore, right? So it makes the work in the West really doubly hard in that sense. You know what I mean? Because it's very jaded, right? It's very hard for you to convince me to be a Taoist. You know, because I'm not a pre-Taoist, I'm a post-Taoist. You see? Because all the things that you tell me, I kind of have cultural memory of all those things. So it's very hard for you to get me back into that, you see, because it's not fresh anymore. And there's the taint of history, you see. very interestingly at RBS, I'm not sure whether I should share this, maybe I should, but I mean it in the best uh, way I could. So RBS, they will go to do street evangelism at RBS in Cameron Highlands, right? They go to Tanah Rata, right, and they start tracting and start to share the gospel, right? Then they met this French couple, okay, and introduced themselves, the RBS students, and then the French couple, Christianity, no, we hate Christianity because Christianity is responsible for all this, the all this Spanish Inquisition and right, all these things that the Christians have done. So they come back defeated. They ask me, I said, well, you should have told them it's not the Christian part of them who did it, it's the white people part that did that. The Christians in the East, we don't do these kind of things. It's the Ang Mo who do these kind of things. Yeah, so because it's a French couple, right? It is not the Christian part of you, of your past, it's the Ang Mo part. Okay, I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not. Because you see, here's the thing. All these things got blamed on Christianity. Right? Not on Western imperialism, but blamed on Christianity. Okay. We never colonized anyone. You guys. So, and the decline of liberal Protestantism. Why the decline of liberal Protestantism? Because why don't just be atheist? You know what I mean? All right. So those who are very committed to Christ, they will move to the evangelical wing. So a lot of the growth of the Presbyterian Church of America was actually due to migration from Protestant Church USA. You understand? So whole churches left the ecumenical denomination and joined the evangelical denomination like that. You see, so that is one reason for the decline, and the other decline is also because it's not really inspiring lah. I mean, sorry, for a Christian believer, yeah. And then you try to get the who are you appealing to? Who are you really appealing to? It's hard to imagine who you're appealing to. So the nominals, they'll just leave Christianity altogether, right? And I can talk about why the nominals leave Christianity. Because it's okay to be atheist with the rise of movements such as the new atheist movement, right? The new atheist movement, Richard Dawkins, so on and so forth, the four horsemen of the non-apocalypse, they call themselves, because there's four of them. The four horsemen of the non-apocalypse, right? So they will go out to. So atheism, you believe in God, great. I don't believe in God, that's fine, right? New atheism is to say that religion is actually dangerous, especially after 9/11. Christopher Hitchens wrote the book, why God is not great. God is not great, something like that. As a reaction towards 9/11, okay, and paint all religion, okay, because you say, right, 9/11, but that's not our religion. Well, your religion have a past as well. Just that in this, right now, in the early 21st century, it is not your religion, another religion that is having this problem. But then 500 years ago, it was your religion. So just religions are not great, lah. Okay. So, and so therefore we have to dismantle religion and make everyone scientific. So they become anti-Christian. It's not just non-Christian, but anti-Christian. We should expose Christianity. We meet a Christian, laugh at him. That's really the ethos of the new atheism of Richard Dawkins and so on and so forth, right? So we should ridicule Christianity because we want to disabuse people of fantasies and superstitions, because we want to stamp out superstition from our society. Superstition is holding community back, right? Without these people, we're going to have serious scientific progress that's for the Commonwealth, right? You know what I mean? Our civilization is going to be so much greater without Christianity. Is the idea lah? Okay. Sam Harris. So that empowers people to say that, okay, not only is Christianity false, Christianity is dangerous. So therefore, the decline of Christianity as a whole. And in the place of that, right, humans are deeply religious. There's just a gene in our right. There's just something in our brain that is wired towards religion. All society does it, right? So in the absence of that, of Christianity, you can, of course, people embrace other faiths. So there's a growth of other religions in the West. But for those who say let's be done with religion completely, then they have to invent their own religion. And so a lot of the manifestation of 21st century campus university setting, because usually these are started by intellectuals in universities, right? Because intellectuals in universities, they don't have to work a day in their life, right? They never graduated from, they never left school, right? They started in kindergarten, then they go to primary school, then they go to secondary school, then they go to university, and then they get their they get their postgraduate degree, then they get their PhD, and they stay in school, right? And they're just there pontificating, talking about how to change large scale systems, right? Things that they have never experienced in, right? They talk about economics. They have never been an economic agent, participant in the economy, right? And they talk about all these things, right? All these problems come from intellectuals. Even the Spanish Inquisition is by this. It's not the farmers farming who got time to do all these things, right? It is intellectuals sitting in their armchair, right? And talking about dreams, right? Talking about the ideal society, the utopia, New Jerusalem, right? So they are the ones that cause untold misery, right? Karl Marx was an intellectual, never worked a day in his life. Right? So talk about the struggle. Okay, so that kind of thing, right? Yeah, I don't quite trust intellectuals who haven't done much in their life other than writing papers, especially the humanities one. At least the scientific guys, right? If your thing doesn't work, you don't get funded, right? Humanities, you just write, it doesn't have to work. Nothing has to work. It's just a piece of paper. Humanities arguing for some postmodern something. And this create a new orthodoxy within the universities. And now become a new religion. And then this new religion that the universities have made, okay, has a lot of religious stuff, including what is holy and what is not holy, right? What is orthodoxy and what is unorthodox. And so so there's an excommunication process as well, because you want to excommunicate things that are not holy, right? They're profane. But the problem is that there's no atonement in this new religion. There's no forgiveness. You can't get back. You can't get back in. So how do you excommunicate with the internet? Cancel culture, right? You cancel them. That's it. The end of the story. That's the new religion. Okay, evangelicals, having left the mainline denominational settings, right, and all the trappings of history, they start with these independent church movements, right? The NECF type independent church movements, but very hard to do big projects. One of the problem with us, right? CBSF, very hard to do big projects because everybody is autonomous, correct? Whereas if you have a bishop, then different. Okay, let's buy this piece of land, let's develop this big thing, okay, and how do we pay for it? We prorate, pro rata, how many members you got, okay, we divide by our membership, and then each church responsible like that, right? To meet the needs, right? But in this independent type churches, very hard to do these kind of things. And Christianity, we always desire fellowship, right? So we have to create networks. So now there's this rise of network-based mega churches, right? There is multi-campus, multi-site, that eventually you cannot do that anymore. So then it just developed into network-based new denominations, really. But then they don't call themselves denominations. It's just network-based churches. So there is that kind of a evangelical realignment away from old school denominational stuff, but kind of like a new denominational way of doing things. The Pentecostals, great contribution, first wave, second wave, third wave, but there's a strand of Pentecostalism that is giving challenges, a lot of challenges, okay, which is the when you have independent charismatic churches, that's great, independent charismatic churches, but that independent means that it really depends on the pastor and the direction that the pastor brings the church towards. Okay, and then depends what you're chasing after. If you're chasing after what Pentecostalism has always been chasing after, holiness, sanctification, all right, then no problem. But if you're chasing after numbers, you're chasing after fame, then it's very easy to fall into prosperity gospel. I've been looking at some of these prosperity preachers that they just start off that way. They start off as a church in the house, right? In the living room, they start this church, right? And you preach tithing. You preach tithing not because you want the money necessarily, but because it's in the Bible. You know what I mean? Teaching about money is part of biblical teaching. The Bible talks about money. You're a faithful preacher, you speak about money. But as you grow and your programs work, it's because your programs work, right? And your programs, right, require certain type of musical instruments and PA system and systems, right? And this costs money. So as long as you're growing, you're fine. Okay, you're growing, fine. You're able to buy all these things, maintain all these things, cost a lot of money. Your budget balloons, right? But then you have the offering that makes up for it. Once a year, you'll talk about money because the Bible talks about money, right? You're just trying to be faithful. But then the thing is that, let's just say there's 1 year, there's a dip in collection. A dip in collection, right? You start to panic a little, right? Because my budget is so big right now. I have to have all these commitments. And then you start to, okay, you know what? I need to talk about money a bit more. So I start to talk about money twice a year. And then it works. People start offering. And then you start to talk about it once every quarter. Then start to talk about it every Sunday. Every Sunday you talk about the need to tithing. Then tithing become its own special segment within offering, right? Like giving, every time we have offering, there'll be someone giving the testimony of how God has blessed them in their life, how they offered money and then God blessed them in their life. That kind of a thing, right? And then to outright prosperity gospel. There's a difference between talking about prosperity, all right, and prosperity gospel. Just as there's a difference between talking about social work and social gospel. Social gospel means social is the gospel, right? So prosperity gospel means prosperity is the gospel. Meaning to say that we are sons and daughters of the King of Kings, right? And so our Father is rich, and so we have the shalom. If we are really have the Holy Spirit, then we should have the blessing, right? And this is over-realized eschatology, that things from the eternity future is brought to the present, okay? And say that right now, today, we should have the health, we should have wealth, we should have all these things, right? So we should have, blessing should be comprehensive. Meaning to say, if you have all these financial gains, then it is really a testimony to God's blessing. But what happens if you don't have? Right? So that is the problem. What happens if you don't have? What happens if your investment don't grow? Are you saved? Are you a Christian? So prosperity then gets equated with the gospel itself in a very, not in an absolute way, but in a very nuanced way, you see. So that was what made it into prosperity gospel. And the word of faith movement, because in the 20th century, you can only really start in the 20th century because of the reach. Before that, you don't have that kind of reach. But after, in the 20th century, we start having radio programs and we start having televangelists, all right? People appearing on TV and then seek for money. And then the money, people start to donate to this from anywhere in the world, right? Giving money to this organizations and money, you know, okay, that televangelist is also just a human being, right? You know what I mean? So money flows in, and the theology is that this is blessing, right? So the more money I am able to accrue, the more blessing it seems that I'm gaining from God. And despite my lifestyle, so my lifestyle should be okay, right? Because God is blessing. It's a very Samson thing. So, so, so that in the 21st century with the internet, right? So then the cost of becoming a televangelist is much lower. Previously, you need to appear in front of TV. Now you just need to have a YouTube, right? And you're able to be to do that, to solicit for money worldwide. You can get. Um, yeah. And there's some challenges with worship and music also. Has been, I mean, I'm not an old-fashioned guy. I do sing Hillsong, you know, but the thing is that, okay, it seems that these bands, these songs are, there's an industry, right, around this. Previously, when Francis Havergal was writing songs, okay, it was a different setting. You know what I mean? Horatius Bonar writing song, it was a different setting. He was writing song for Horatius Bonar, um, uh, um, for all these gospel rallies. You know what I mean? Now there's a chart, right? That is the Christian Music Award. Christian Music Award, but people actually getting awards as though it is it is Hollywood, right? So with that, then we want to have like hits, right? We need to make hits. So they make hits. There are these signs to how to make hits, right? And too much money is involved. It's just too much money involved in music, in Christian music these days. So then, how do we write songs, right? We write songs that can appeal to as many people as possible. So if your songs is a bit too theological or too specific in your theology, then you only get subscription from a certain segment of Christianity. But if you write it with the lowest common denominator, right? Lowest common denominator, then you get a wider acceptance, can sell more. All you need to do is to don't say anything wrong, right? So that people can go, why can't I sing song? What's wrong with the song? So that's a really low bar. What is wrong with the song instead of what's good about the song? Right? It's about what is wrong with the song. Nothing wrong with the song. Why can't I sing it? So that become kind of like the modus operandi. Of course, there is a whenever there's a liberal movement, there is a conservative movement, right? So there's also the more theologically nuanced song producers, but it's a jungle out there. Who knows where this is going? Right. Technology, yeah, right. We can't talk about the 21st century without talking about internet technology. Very funnily, in 1994 to 1996, I can't quite remember. It could be 1995 for all I can remember. 1995 maybe. I had a pen pal. Actually, he's a Malaysian, and then he went uh, overseas to study. So he's much older than me. I was like Form 1. He's like in university. Okay. And he went to Glasgow to study to do medicine. Um, and he was a mentor of mine. So with the Boys Brigade, he was a mentor of mine. So that I started writing to him, right? Pen pal, okay, like that. Then he writes back. After several rounds, he told me that, hey, you don't have to write like this anymore. You can send me an email. And this is my email address. Email. This is 96, I guess. Nobody knows what an email is, right? So I like, oh my goodness, I want to write him an email. But how do I write an email? So no, I did. I went to the post office. I went to the post office at Jalan Sultan, I think. PJ New Town. Is it Jalan Sultan? Jalan Sultan, the big post office. The small, go for the big one, right? Because email. Then the counter said, email to apa tu? Email ke? So, or maybe email lah. So, so I sent him an email, which is basically regular mail. So then I said, hey, what's email? Nobody knows what's email, right? Then he explained to me what in the next letter he draws he draws servers and whatever. So because that time emails only available for people in the universities, right? So that's funny. So basically, it's only the 20th century we don't have this problem, right? This is a uniquely 21st century problem. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Right? So this technology, internet and social media, we have online worship, Zoom churches. There's even um fully 3D churches, right? Um uh virtual reality churches, whereby it's a second life thing whereby we just wear your goggles and then you select your character and then you can walk around in that world, okay? And somebody will build a church in that world as well, and then you can go there and listen to someone. Anyone can start a church and give a sermon, right? So it's an open world. It's a game world where you wear your virtual reality goggles and you just walk around in that world. And the world's a very big world, right? You can teleport from portal to portal, all right? And then somebody might start a building there, a digital building. There's a church, okay? And then you can listen, talk to people who are within the proximity, right? So you go there. So there's all kinds of crazy. Okay, to me it's crazy, but this is 21st century things that can only happen in 21st century. Zoom churches, of course, Zoom churches. Everybody knows what a Zoom church is. We've all been, whatever, I don't care lah. You are what, Baptist lah, Brethren lah, Anglican lah, High Church, Low Church, whatever church. Everybody was Zoom church in, in 2020 to 2022, right? So, yeah, YouTube preachers. Now, YouTube preachers is a big deal. I'm going to skip to pandemic. Pandemic that talk about this. Talk again about this one, right? Okay, for you to, because the pandemic really changed everything. Because it was an immediate disruption. Not to say that Zoom technology wasn't there. The Zoom company already existed before the pandemic, and before that we have things like Skype, right? That have Microsoft Teams. They have all these technologies already in place, but there wasn't a worldwide adoption of it. It was the pandemic that caused the worldwide adoption. My mother now knows how to Zoom, right? You know what I mean? Okay, so everybody has to Zoom. Everybody need to have the MySejahtera. So everybody need a handphone. Correct? Without handphone, you cannot do MySejahtera. My mother said, I'll never adopt technology. Right? I'm so old already. But you need, in order to go anywhere, you need MySejahtera. In order to attend any church thing, you need Zoom. Okay. So the global lockdown of 2020 to 2021 or 2022, depending on where you live, right, had really serious and indelible, okay, mark on the church forever. I think that this really changes church forever. Okay. Which then all of us were at home. Only thing we can look at is YouTube. So we get a lot of YouTube preachers. Okay. And so what happened is that people start asking their neighboring churches, their friends, hey, what is your Zoom account? What is a Zoom account? What is a Zoom account? Right? Because they just hop from Zoom to Zoom. You know what I mean? Right? It really democratizes everything, church attendance. We are no longer limited by geography, by denominational boundaries. It becomes very individual autonomy. And if I don't like, I just alter the tab. Right? I don't like, I just close, open a new tab. You know what I mean? And so then what happens is that people are going to start circulating the best preachers around. The best preachers. So, like everything, it's a top 1% gets 99% of the share. Right? This is a rule. It's a universal rule. People always against the top 1% billionaires, right? Who controls 99% of the wealth. It can't be any different. It has to be like that. You know, there are like 100 composers out there, hundreds of composers out there, right? 99% of the time, right? It's Mozart, Beethoven. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And even for Beethoven, he wrote so many things. Okay. The only thing that you really get played about Beethoven is the Fifth Symphony. The rest really don't matter. The 99% don't. So the 99% of Beethoven doesn't matter. It's a Fifth Symphony, the 1% that gets 99% of anything Beethoven, right? And within the Fifth Symphony itself is such a long symphony. It's the dun 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 dun, right? That gets all the attention, right? The rest doesn't. This is reality. Okay. So then, with the availability of YouTube sermons, okay, YouTube preachers, um, podcasters, then the A-list preachers get 99% of the attention. Right? Everybody wants to watch a John Piper sermon, right? Everybody wants to watch a Tim Keller sermon. So your local pastor, hey, well, my pastor not so good, he's preaching. It's like, yeah, because you're comparing your local pastor with top 1% A-list, right? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of they're now relativizing the sermons of the local preacher. His sermon doesn't get circulated. It is this A-list top 1% guys. And there's a reason why they get the millions of views, because it's a million of views type of a preacher. Something to think about. So it really depends on your theological leanings, right? So everybody got their own crowd one, based on your leanings. Yeah. So the Reformed evangelicals type, right? They will have your Carson Piper MacArthur, right? The kind of a grouping. And then on the more evangelical left, all right, you would have, so that's the evangelical right. Okay. At the evangelical left, you will get your anti-right, you get mm, 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 T. McKee, all right, some of these Bible Project guys, right? And these are A-list. You know what I mean? On the side, you get your Francis Chan, all of that, right? And then on the further on the other side, right, you get your Joseph Prince, you know what I mean? Joyce Meyer. So basically, everybody has to have their crowd. But the problem is that it is the top 1% of every segment, all right, that gets all the attention. No? Mm. Of course, if you're going to circulate somebody, you're not going to circulate the 50th percentile. You're going to circulate the 99th percentile. Wouldn't you? I would. Of course, higher production value, right? Great, better reach, and also because the Americans themselves will be watching, so they get the millions of views already from America, then get circulated to us as well. So 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 it becomes really a global church, global church in more ways than one. Yeah. So the pandemic is really the catalyst. Okay. So YouTube preachers, so theologians and pastors as content creators. I'm uploading my stuff to YouTube. Nobody watches, but it's okay, right? The people tell me they watch, but I really try to serve the local community. You know what I mean? But there's content creators, podcasters. I listen to podcasts, Christian podcasts, driving, cooking. I would listen to podcasts. You know, my auntie long ago, I remember the Red Diffusion, right? Like Dick Fu saying Red Diffusion, telling stories, right? So now it's the new 21st century Red Diffusion, right? Podcast. Um, Jordan Peterson reaches more people about Christianity and the Bible than any Christian preacher combined, maybe. Jordan Peterson, have you heard of him? You must have heard of him, all right? Jordan Peterson, he is a clinical psychologist, um, um, and he's very articulate, and he studied the Bible. He wouldn't call himself Christian the way we call ourselves Christian. He's an old school classical liberal Christianity, cultural Christianity, cultural Christianity. All right. So, um, his course on Genesis sold out. Theater completely booked, and then it's recorded, put online, millions of views. His series on the book of Genesis. Now his series on the book of Exodus is also sold out. And a lot of people come to Christ. Actually, a lot of people are giving Christianity a chance because they heard people like Jordan Peterson talking about the Bible, although he himself doesn't attend church. So this is some of the new phenomena that we are looking at. And so therefore, there's a democratization of theological authority. What the bishop says, really doesn't matter. It's really about democratize. If you have the goods, all right, then you'll have the eyeballs. Yeah. It's not about what position of authority you hold. Okay. Now, because of the pandemic, what is church? Hybrid model of church. Sacraments, for us, no problem, right? Immediately we just go and break bread at home, right? Because we are Zwinglian in our view of the Holy Communion, right? Symbolic. But for those who hold a sacramental view, especially Lutherans and Catholics, big problem. Very big problem. Because there's supposed to be some transubstantiation going on. There's supposed to be some sacramental union consubstantiation going on. So they took a while to be able to even articulate their position. Yes. Yeah. So at first, when the pandemic happened, the 2 weeks lockdown, all right, they said no Holy Communion. All right, because it is a sacrament. So the priest have to be the one doing it, and then you receive communion. So they say, why don't we just trust in the Lord? 2 weeks, no communion. Then 2 weeks become a month. A month became 3 months, right? Then people are like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do, right? There's no sacraments. So then they have eventually, after like 9 months to a year, right? Late 2020 or early 2021, then they come up with a position. They got Singapore TTC, somebody, right, was doing a study on how to do this, okay, for various denominations, because we really needed some theological input into this. For us, Zwinglians, we don't care, lah, right? But for them, it matters. So they say, okay, no, because Christ is not limited by time and space. And so even let's just say we do in our church, regular church, right? The priest will only bless that particular, or rather will only will be using the bread that he's using, right? This is the body of Christ, right? And this is my body, this is my cup, this is my blood. But not all these things that people so it's actually by a distance. What about the overflow room? Many churches have overflow room, watching the TV as they take the Holy Communion. So if that was valid back then, it should also still be valid right now, okay, via distance. So it took them a long time to come up with their response to how to still be sacramental, but in the Zoom era. Yeah, it's a real challenge. And the permanent exit of nominal members. This is the one. Right? Last time you go to church because grandma said must go to church. Right? Now grandma in her house, in your house. Then Zoom church, I'm not going. Right? And after the pandemic, I'm not coming back. So basically, the permanent exit of nominal members. And of course, artificial intelligence. How can we live out artificial intelligence, right? So in the last few years, the rise of generative AI, ChatGPT, I believe I did a sermon on ChatGPT a while back, right? On technology. My whole sermon was basically it was a sermon that was supposed, yeah. So I had the whole sermon generated by ChatGPT. People like, huh, what's going on? And then I said, oh, this is for ChatGPT. Let me tell you about technology, right? So ChatGPT, Midjourney for images, ChatGPT for text. These are large language models. There's going to be a lot of theological issues, such as what do we mean by soul? If the AI can eventually do everything that we do, and there's no difference, completely pass the Turing test. The Turing test is a test that uh, here is a computer generated thing, right? And this is a human generated thing. When a human judge cannot differentiate the two, okay, then it has passed the Turing test. It's very behavioral oriented. So we are a bunch of neurons and synapses firing, and the result of that we call that mind, soul, whatever, right? So why is it not so when electrons fires by neurons and synapses, okay, we say soul. When electrons fires not on neurons and synapses um but on integrated circuits on, right, silicons. So why is that not so? Why is that not mind? Right? So it really cuts into what is the human being, what is a human being, what is the human soul, and what it's deeply theological. So this is something that has to be worked out, and it will be continually worked out as technology progresses. AI is just in its infancy right now. When I studied AI, when I was in computer school, right, and it's of way after I learned what an email is, I eventually went to do software engineering, and I did semesters of artificial intelligence. So I know the literature quite well. We are really at its infancy stage. Like how the early 2000s, the dot-com era, the dot-com era was really the infancy of of uh, of the World Wide Web, the internet technology, and all of that. Look at the internet now, right? Remember, you have to use your 56K modem, connect to the telephone, right? Dun, dun, dee, dee, gong, 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 gong. Hey, get off the internet. I didn't make a phone call, right? That kind of, right? 56K to right now we have like lowest 100 Mbps, you know? So it's ridiculous, you know what I mean? So the growth of the internet technology, right, will be paralleled by the growth of AI until it arrives at maturity. Okay. Like for example, I was just talking to elder women the other day that looking at the statistics of the offering, it seems that now the majority of the offering comes from the QR code, right? And only a minority of the offering comes from the bags. So if the trajectory continues, then the bag thing is largely symbolic. It's largely symbolic, whereas the substance is actually the QR code, right? You know what I mean? So church changes. We have to rethink through everything. Okay, rise of generative AI in society, sermons. I use AI a lot now to help me with my work. Doesn't mean that I check my brain out, but I use AI, right, as a point of reference, research, and everything. Okay. Uh, to create these courses, I use AI a lot to ask AI, hey, what do you think about this and the other thing? So it is inevitable. You have to use AI now. I joined a forum on Facebook group, Logos Bible Software users group, and a lot of people there are already saying that they use ChatGPT more than they use a Logos Bible Software in their preparing for sermons. You know, so opportunities and challenges for the church, definitely, definitely. Theological and ethical or other challenges. Sexuality and gender will remain a big challenge. It has already divided denominations. The United Methodist Church, for example, already divided. Right? So there is the LGBT affirming denomination and the non-affirming counterpart, right? So role of women in leadership continues to be debated, even within the Brethren assemblies. I I preach quite a lot in Brethren Assembly Circuit recently, not to name them, if they don't want to be named. I spoke at several churches, and at least two of them I've seen whereby the worship leader is woman. Okay. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. and the deaconesses really play a big role. In PJ Gospel Hall, it's not why we don't have deaconesses. Actually, the church leadership has approached several women for uh for deaconess, but they're all rejected so far. So that's what it is. Okay. Social issues, prosperity gospel, hyper grace, new age intrusion into the church. The church becoming more emotional instead of intellectual. All right, a lot of new age stuff gets smuggled into the church. That things are more Oprah Winfrey than Bible, kind of a thing. You know, so that it is personality test that actually has a new age origin. Okay, in witchcraft, all things. All right, what was it? Huh? The anagram. Anagram has a root in witchcraft, right? That now being taken as part of Christian spirituality or something. I don't know. Okay. Social justice, ecology, creation care. So liberal, fundamentalists, evangelicals will all have their responses to social justice, to ecology, to creation care. So the fundamentalists will be more like this is nothing to do with the gospel. The liberals will say this is the gospel. The evangelical will say that this should be the fruit of the gospel, right? Different. It's not the gospel. It is the gospel. It should be the fruit of the gospel. Yeah. Abortion, embryonic stem cells. So stem cell research, embryonic stem cell research would require killing of an embryo. Yeah, of course. How can the embryo survive that research? Euthanasia. Okay. So this will be issues that the church will have to continue to grapple with in the 21st century. Interfaith engagements, religious pluralism. Now the West is no longer monolithically Christian, right? And since it is now polycentric, there are many centers, right? So then in many of these places, Christianity minority. So then you cannot just use the Western style as though the Christian majority style to engage with other religions. You cannot speak from authority. You have to speak as equals, right? So religious pluralism, secularism, atheism, these are the interfaith engagement, Christian Islam relations in particular, all right? Within the Abrahamic faith, there's a lot of tension that needs to be worked out. Persecution remains in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and also in China. There is persecution. So this will be something that would not be quickly resolved without something serious. So a lot of people have to die. I think some cataclysmic event has to occur in order for this to be resolved, right? Or at least suppressed. I don't believe diplomacy alone or engagement alone would get us there. I think that something cataclysmic has to happen, a world war of some sort, maybe. I don't know. Hope not. But we believe in the word of the Lord. When Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Whatever century we're in, whatever era we're in, even in the 21st century, it is still the same question. Who do people say that Jesus is? Some religious people would say that he's John the Baptist. Other religious people may say that he's Elijah. Some would say this, some of the other things. Secular people will have their own opinions of who Jesus is as well. So Jesus said to them, but who do you, my disciples, who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. If you are able to confess that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, it is not because you figured it out. It is because it is the Father in heaven who has revealed this to you. And I tell you, you are Peter. On this rock, there's a lot of footnote as to what this means, what this rock is. It could be Peter, it could be the rock that was pointing at Caesarea Philippi, okay? Or equally, it is the confession that Simon Peter made. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Upon this rock, upon this confession that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, Jesus says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. You have done 2,000 years of church history covering 12 lessons of it. You'll see that actually it is quite repetitive, the themes. All right. There's the liberals, there's the conservatives, there's a move in the world, there's the move of the Holy Spirit. The church continues to be built as long as we continue to affirm that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. This is our confession. And the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Now, it says the gates of hell. A lot of people thinking that we are fighting a defensive war. The gates of hell shall not win against us, right? We're defending against the onslaught of the spiritual forces of evil. That is not what this verse is about. It is not the infantry of hell. It is not the cavalry of hell. It is the gates of hell, meaning we are the one that's on the offense. It is hell that's on the defending its own gates. So the gates of hell will not prevail against the forward march, the onslaught of the church. The church will be victorious. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on the earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. We bind the spiritual forces of evil. We bind heresies. We bind false teachings. We bind the powers of the prince of the air, and we loose people unto eternal life. Right? So therefore, this is our eschatological hope. Regardless of trends, Christ builds his church. The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And the final vision of Revelation 7:9-10 is that there will be a global multi-ethnic multitude. All people, nations, tribes, and languages will come before the throne. A reality that was not possible before the 21st century. All right. Now, with the 21st century, we have this reality, okay, already foreshadowed in the 21st century growth of global Christianity. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. Christ has bound his return to the preaching of the gospel to the whole world, to all nations. We are getting close. We are getting close. We are getting close to Revelation 7:9-10. We are getting close to Matthew 24, verse 14. And one day it will happen. The holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as the bride. The bride is ready, adorned for her husband. So the Christian response to church history is, come, Lord Jesus. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. I hope that in my lifetime, Christ's return, right? Huh? In our lifetime, in our I'm only thinking about myself. I'm only thinking about myself. In our lifetime, right? Doesn't look like the world can survive any longer, given the rapid pace of change, right? I feel like, yeah. I know every generation says that, but every generation should say that. Yeah, so should this generation. Okay, so let's just close here.